Assalamu alaikum. So I was asked to answer a few questions that was overflowing from the online trialogue that we had the other day. And the first question is, you talked about the difference between homosexual orientation and homosexual behavior. What are the implications for people of homosexual orientation regarding engaging in homosexual behavior? So, firstly, we need to make a distinction between homosexual orientation and identity on the one hand, and homosexual behavior on the other hand, right? So, as I mentioned in the trilogue, that there are scholars like the jurist Abu Bakr al-Jassas from the 9th century, Imam Abu Hanifa himself, and Imam al-Nawawi. These were scholars that have done some work around the differentiation between homosexual identity and homosexual behavior. And as I was explaining, the homosexual identity, according to these imams, is innate, and there is no punishment based on that, right? And homosexual behavior comes from the story of Qawm Lut or Sodom and Gomorrah, where in these three incidences in which the inmates of Sodom and Gomorrah engage in homosexual behavior had nothing to do with homosexual orientation. And so when you have a homosexual orientation or an identity, the question is, can you have sexual interactions with the same sex? So there is no prohibition in the Quran against that. And the hadith or the purported hadith that states that homosexuality is punishable is considered by many of the scholars of hadith as either inauthentic, fabricated, weak hadith, or it's an ahad hadith, meaning that only one chain of narrators narrated it, or that it was collected by one or two of the scholars, where the rest would have rejected it. So, and according to Imam Abu Bakr al-Jassas, he was saying that none of these hadith can be used as a punishment for homosexual activity, right? So now you ask the question, does the Quran talk about homosexual orientation? No, the Quran doesn't. The Quran only mentions as far as in Surah 17 verse 84, قُلْ كُلُّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى الشَّاكِلَتِهِ فَرَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنْ هُوَ أَحْدَى سَبِيلًا, that say that everyone acts according to their own disposition, their own nature, and only Allah knows who is best guided on the way. Then in another surah where Allah talks about the hijab of women, Allah mentions that التابعين غير أولي الإربة من الرجال, the servants or the followers of the Prophet who have no attraction towards women. فَكَانُوا يَدْعُوهُ مِنْ غَيْرَ أُولِي الْإِرْبَةِ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ. This is what Aisha radiallahu anha said, that we did not cover or wear the hijab in front of men who had no attraction towards us, according to the Quran. In terms of the sexual intimacy for homosexuals, there is no Quranic verse or hadith that condemns sexual interaction between two people of the same sex based on sexual orientation, right? All the condemnation of homosexuality is based on behavior. And if we analyze the behavior according to the story in the Quran, the first one was the molestation of men that happened on the highways of trade. The second one was the orgies that happens in the circles, right? In the temple of Ishtar, which was related to idolatrous worship. And the last one was the attempted molestation of the angels of Allah. So in all three of these cases, it does not refer to homosexual orientation, but rather to homosexual behavior, right? So to make it a bit more clearer, if a heterosexual commits a crime such as rape or molestation, we don't say that heterosexuality is haram. We say the behavior is haram, right? So the same for homosexuals. If homosexuals engage in an intimate relationship that is based on consent and is motivated by love and compassion between two people, there is no basis for denying such a relationship to happen. But even if a homosexual engages in molestation or rape or any other form of homosexual behavior that is harmful to the self or to society, we cannot then say that homosexuality is wrong. So I hope that somehow clears up that question.